Now, after some time with my DJI Osmo Pocket 3 in a bunch of different settings and scenarios, I can definitively say that this thing can do it all. And not just as a casual vlog camera or something I bring in all my paid gigs, which I do, but something even better, and why bringing it to an art museum for my long-term review is precisely the perfect place to show how the Pocket 3 continues a motion picture legacy and might just be a legit cinema camera.
Run down here. You run down. I'll follow you down. And then we're done. Then I can go to LA.
This is wild. In 1974, exactly 50 years ago, also going down steps of an art museum, Garrett Brown tested his invention, which changed cinema from that day forward, and more specifically, what one might now, for better or worse, refer to as cinematic, with stabilized camera movements. And his Steadicam creation left an indelible mark on moviegoers from that moment onward, and led to one of the most iconic scenes in film history. And then to fast forward to 2024 and how the technology has evolved to what is now not just possible, but pocketable too. So this is my long overdue review of the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, and I can say after months of real world usage, from vlogging to actual paid client work, I have some thoughts, but honestly, sometimes it helps to get a second opinion. Okay, I finally caved and I bought the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. In fact, I've got two of them, but not for the reason that you'd expect. Let me show you. So I'm going to do a few main comparisons as I lent one to a friend for a beginner versus pro shootout at the museum. And then I'll walk you through how I use it on paid gigs alongside my Sony FX3, a camera 10 times the price, or against my Sony a7C II on an actual gimbal for real estate work, which reminds me of another Garrett Brown shot. And then onto my trip to Universal against a third full-frame camera with industry-leading stabilization, the Sony ZV-E1. And also now, since I have two Pocket 3s, one which I'll be gifting to my wife for her channel, I'm also going to be able to compare it against itself in a different camera settings, along with using some different LUTs I created. And to my surprise, which I'll show you, D-Log isn't always the better choice for me to get the most cinematic look, but honestly, it's just crazy where the tech is now, some 50 years from the Steadicam, and that we get a 4K pocket camera with 10-bit color and a gimbal attached that looks as good as it does for under $500. But maybe the best bit, though, is that you don't have to know any of that, and why I think it's so popular right now, as it's the best entry-level camera for beginners. Okay, so we are at the Getty Center, which is a really cool modern museum here in Los Angeles, great for architectural shooting. And because I'm here with my friend who's a model, who also is a budding photographer, more with those, like, what do you call those, digicams?
Yeah.
Which are cool. They're very vibey, too cool for me. And since I have two of these DJI Osmo Pocket 3s, I thought I'd give her one and sort of test out. It's in all the default settings. So I think the glamour effect is on, the colors are standard, and I'm gonna just see a little competition here. She can do videos, photos, or whatever she wants. And we're going to compare footage between a beginner and maybe less of a beginner. Now let's see if she knows how to turn it on. This is the fun part.
Oh, I turned it on.
Yeah, that's true. I actually have never done that before. So you're in vertical mode. Can you tap it to yourself? And there you go. Oh, well, yours looks so much better than mine. Okay, cool. Let's go to that camera. Yeah. And the color is better too. And if you want it wider, boop.
Oh, it's like 0.5.
Yeah. Wow, that looks so much better than...
I think it's the glamour effect.
I might have to do that beginning a little bit.
You know when it turns over and then it flips? Does that show?
Yeah.
When you're like, it's recorded,
yeah.
So it's like an awkward little flip.
Yeah, but so there's also, if you touch this, I think that works. Oops. You can zoom in. So before I show you the rest of the day out at the museum, let me really quickly give you the other benefit of having two Pocket 3s with my first test, and then I'll get into actually how I use it along with my bigger cameras on a real estate shoot. Okay, so what we have here on my left or your right is I have the default settings pretty much straight out of the box, which is their standard auto white balance, auto exposure, which is the range from 50 to 3200, and it is their standard color. Whereas on the right, your left, is D-Log 10-bit And I will be putting their LUT on it as well and maybe tweaking that so you can see the difference. And I changed the auto exposure setting parameters to 50 to 800. I noticed that I had been using this indoors, which I'm inside right now, and it was getting very grainy. Now I'm gonna go outside, which is a bit brighter and obviously more overcast. I also changed this to 3K 24. In vertical, you can't get 4K 24 frames per second. So they're both in 3K 24 frames per second. So let's go from inside to outside so you can see how the exposure adjusts. You can see the white balance adjusting already. I've got face tracking on. And I just wanted to give you a full disclosure here. DJI did reach out to me and gift me this creator combo on the right. And of course, I already had one, so I was willing to accept it because I wanted to give one to my wife. So you can conclude that, yes, this may be a biased review, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you the results. So I can't bias what your eyes see. You either like the look or you don't. But the results that were most resounding for me, and to give you my immediate rationalization for buying the Pocket 3, which was on this job that I did the other day for a local brokerage that I work with doing mixed real estate content for. And I typically use the Pocket 3 either for supplementary pickup shots to my Sony a7C II, which is on a gimbal, or with my rigged up FX3, which I initially thought I may use it for like simultaneous vertical shooting, but I haven't done that yet for a few reasons. One of which I honestly just hate making vertical videos. Like I tried it with this house, but trying to fit in this massive mansion, which is basically a giant landscape oriented rectangle. So trying to squeeze that in portrait mode just looks dumb in my opinion. And I'm also not a fan of Instagram as a platform right now, but that is an endless topic for another day. So I basically try to persuade my clients to shoot horizontally when I can, and then I cut it up vertically later. So I brought my Sony a7C II on a gimbal with a 14mm f2.8 lens, but now that I'm seeing this footage, it also makes me think the Pocket 3 is a really good behind the scenes camera. Regardless, again, to my surprise, I'm finding that I'm using the Pocket 3 not just for BTS coverage like this or supplementary stuff, but oftentimes I've been using it as my main A camera on these gigs. So really on day one or job one, the Pocket 3 already paid for itself. Sometimes I wonder if I should shoot with this, my Sony a7C II, or just use the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. We're gonna see, I'm gonna try them both out. I'm probably gonna lean towards this, but only because I have it, so I'd feel wasteful. But yeah, I'm gonna try to do some pickup shots with this as well. So I got this camera for real estate, but not just the standard shots. What I actually do is I use this camera as my test shot. So instead of setting up my whole rig, what I do is I bring this around and I scan the shot that I want to see if the setup is worth it. If it's a good shot, I'll grab my camera. And sometimes I just use the test shot because it's that good. So for example, I just want to test out this shot where I use the balcony to cut the sun in and out to get these star flares. I didn't know if it was going to work. It obviously works better on my camera than on the DJI, but I just wanted to see if the framing was going to work. I have my ultra wide angle lens on. It's still probably not as wide as my 14mm. I've got the Rokinon f2.8 on there. But it does give me a good enough example of what the framing could be and if it's going to work. And I think it totally worked with the Sony a7C II. It probably didn't work as well with the DJI, but it was really cool to see what it would look like in advance. So yeah, so I think I'm done with this house. I didn't do a full property tour. I was doing more of a narrative. Plus it's not staged, so it wouldn't look as good on the inside. So I just got mostly exterior shots and a few interiors. But yeah, I think it's quite impressive just to see this from the outside. Now with the interior shots, I did use an auto exposure. I used the whole range. They're 50 to 3200. It's going to be difficult because there's so many windows and a lot of backlighting. So metering is always going to be tough. So getting your face exposed correctly and not too noisy is going to be difficult. So I'm less likely to use the DJI interior shots, but I do love when I could go from inside to outside because you're going to get smoother shots, and I don't mind its auto exposure when I'm using it that way. Just making sure all the doors are shut. I'm going to do a sweep to make sure all the lights are off as well. The realtor was kind enough to let me use the property as he had work to do, and I just could shoot and shoot all day. Let me see if I locked it. But yeah, it's a big property. I want to make sure it's locked. Okay, so I think I'm done for the day. I should have taken 2 hours to do this, but it took about 4. I just had more shots I want to get, and I really wanted to test both cameras, the DJI Pocket 3 and my Sony a7C II. I didn't use the Pocket 3 as much as I thought I would, but I was also going to do vertical content, and I decided to scrap that. It was just too much to do, trying to do a narrative where I'm giving the talent, the realtor line, so it just needed to be quick and easy, and this still was 4 hours. Okay, bye for now. So normally on most jobs, I bring my FX3 and not my a7C II with a gimbal on it, as I tend to do more narrative content instead of straightforward property tours, which tends to be more run and gun style documentary work, along with doing interviews, which I am purposely getting handheld, not stabilized shots for, but I still always want the option in a pinch to get smooth footage without having to carry both camera setups. So this is such an ideal solution, and this is why no matter what, I always bring the Pocket 3 with me next to my FX3 rig in this bag. And I'm going to do a whole video on my bag setup at some point later, but here's how I pack my A camera and then where I put my Pocket 3. So the fact that I get such high quality gimbal footage tucked into a small side pocket like this is just crazy. And they surprisingly cut together well, just generally a solid pairing. And so too is a pairing of Pocket 3s, which helps me constantly try to tweak the colors to compare between the standard and D-Log. So I thought I've had my Sony FX3 as my main landscape camera, and then I could just pull out the Osmo Pocket 3 for my vertical shots. And so far so good, I've been using it like that, but I still hate vertical, I still hate doing content like that. To me, it's not how my eyes see a scene vertically. I always feel like I'm cropped in and missing a lot of information. But some clients want that, and you have to sort of deliver that, or at least give them options. But here we are. It's nice that I can have 2 vertical images, almost making a landscape shot. Just need 1 more, I guess, or 2 more, I don't know. But yeah, what do you think? Now, comparing these 2 cameras side by side was not something I initially planned to do at all. And first, I'm not sure if you saw my recent video where I compared my Sony a7C II to the ZV-E1 and decided to sell my ZV-E1, which honestly I still miss, as the dynamic stabilization that it has, which has been touted as gimbal replacement good, and it almost was, but when I took the ZV-E1 with me to Warner Brothers, I was so disappointed with the footage because I wanted to share a smooth walking tour of the studios, and it was not that. And that was the first moment that I decided I needed the Pocket 3 as a replacement for it, as I saw how everyone here on YouTube was all walking and talking all over the place, West Wing style, and getting those legit, stable cinematic shots. I also realized what an extreme value the Pocket 3 is over the ZV-E1, a literal savings of $1,500. So then, Universal was the first spot I wanted to test this walking and talking stuff, or in my case, just really walking. But then I kept swapping on and off the wide-angle lens. But it is worth noting that it isn't great with real estate because of straight lines, but it is amazing to have for shots like this when you're vlogging, or just in general. You might want to get sort of a wide coverage where there isn't a lot of lines that may get bent or distorted, but it is nice to have this extra reach. Yeah, and I love that in the case you can actually just clip it in because it's a magnetic filter. But I just wanted to show you and just let you know the sensors are lined up exactly. So this is the coverage you're getting and how much reach. And if I zoom in a little bit, or if I pull in on the camera close to me, you'll notice there's probably some distortion. I don't know if you can see with the straight lines. But yeah, not too bad. It's quite controlled for what it is, for how cheap it is. But definitely a worth get for me. Okay, next. But normally I cringe out when I hold a big camera in front of my face, especially if I'm on a ride, but no one batted an eye at me holding this thing, whereas I did get some looks with the ZV-E1. And sure, the ZV-E1 is a full-frame sensor with some of the best low-light performances you can get, but I still managed to get noisy footage here because I hit some button accidentally when I was on a roller coaster or something. Whereas with a Pocket 3, I decided to take it off D-Log and just turn it on auto to stop fixating on the settings and just, enjoy the rides. Because what I noticed at the museum, which I'll get into more thoroughly there, but especially at Universal, is that sometimes I prefer tweaking the standard color over grading their D-Log, especially when it comes to exposing for the sky. It's almost easier to fix the skin tones and bring down the colors and contrast down than everything back up. So I just kept it in standard, and to my surprise, the footage looks so much better than the ZV-E1, at least in this instance. And frankly, it sounds so much better too, as is, but especially since I got the Creator Combo with the wireless mic. The fact that the DJI Mic 2 is integrated into the camera makes the setup as compact as it is seamless. It's actually ridiculous how nice it is to vlog with, even if I don't really vlog unless I'm testing out cameras. Okay, another thing I want to test out real quickly is the mic system. So as you can hear, the wireless mic is on my left. I should probably lower it a bit. And then on my right here, or your left, is just their audio, just picking it up as is. So you're probably getting a lot more ambient noises, but surprisingly not as bad as I thought. Yeah, so what do you think? Can you hear the difference? I'll be cutting back and forth so you can hear it for yourself. Clearly, if you have a mic, that's better, but maybe if you're in a pinch, it's not that bad. Yeah, so what do you think? Helicopters flying over, police sirens going everywhere. Now, it used to be that if you wanted stable footage, your choices were an action camera with no depth of field, and they were small and stable. And I used to use my GoPro as a vlog cam, but the battery life and overheating and everything in focus was just bad. So you could do that. But if you wanted something with depth of field to look cinematic, you needed to get a proper camera with a fast lens. And then you would also need a gimbal to stabilize that. And I used to try to do this in a compact form by using my super small M2 crane with either my ZV-1 or the original Sony A7C. And it worked all right, but it was still way bigger than I wanted and way more cumbersome to manage, and you still had to balance it all. So the fact that this thing has a gimbal attached at the sides with no fuss to set up, you just flip it on and you get active tracking. So now you don't have to choose between smooth footage and depth of field. I do love the active tracking. It doesn't just do your face, it does pretty much any object you want, and it's pretty sticky. So you do get a little bit of depth of field as well. But yeah, it's nice to have that sort of option, as it also focuses quite closely. So it does give you separation when you want it, if you need it. You're not going to get full frame sensor like depth of field, but you're also not getting an action cam depth of field, but you are getting that amount of stability. So it really is a best of both worlds. Okay, so here we've got active tracking. So one is tracking the other. So it sort of looks like that the wide angle lens adapter allows you to have a better focusing distance. I'm not quite sure if that's true, but look how close I'm getting over here. I'm sure if you zoom in, okay, here we are at a 2-point zoom. Speaking of cinematic, this video popped up a few days ago, funny enough, of the Venice 2, also here at the Getty. Great minds, I guess, or something, but I shot mine first. However, unlike me, they legit had a great DP and a proper Steadicam. So my instinct to pick this place to show off the Pocket 3 seems to be on trend or something. Yeah, I think like you guys, I cringe at the overuse of the word cinematic too, like I've already done here. But if you look on YouTube, it's one of the most searched terms next to any camera. So this is a look that people are seeking as a beginner or a pro, because we're all trying to make things look as good as they possibly can. So my distaste for the word cinematic might be more a me thing, but still, what does it actually mean? Well, it all seems very subjective and not well defined, and yet still, when you see it, I think you know. And of course, it helps having a great location and a great subject matter or talent. Yet I think even more clearly, on top of all that, cinematic in today's vernacular refers to something that is color graded well, but that also varies wildly and is different per style, film, or director. However, again, after that, I actually think, right or wrong, what people are most seeking in video that's not a documentary is smooth, stabilized shots, unless the scene calls for frenetic energy and not shaky footage like your standard dad cam shots, or frankly what you get from most cameras out today, or warpy cell phone videos. Because usually, not to beat a dead horse here, but you need a massive setup and a proper Steadicam or a heavy-duty gimbal to fly a cinema rig on, like the Venice 2, to get good image quality, low-light performance with that minimum 10-bit color, to then be able to grade it cinematically. But this is when I noticed, when playing with grading the D-Log versus the standard, I almost preferred the standard at times. Just look at the sky. All the settings were the same here. And again, to get all these features at this price point, typically this would have been unheard of, and has been the constraint of filmmaking since Rocky ran up those stairs. But not anymore. And look, I didn't even get into the nighttime shooting modes, a video for another day, or using high frame rates or time lapse. And then this thing comes with a battery extender, which I didn't even have to use all day because the battery ran the whole time. And then And then there's this very uncinematic effect, but a very helpful one for my tired-ass looking face, the glam effect, which I may need to start using more. And then, not to completely glaze over this, but this thing takes amazing photos too. And I'm not sure who won the shootout here, but I think she may have had as much fun as I did playing with a Pocket 3. Now, I also wish I recorded this exchange better. But as I was leaving the museum, I hear a woman shouting across the way to me to ask what camera we were using.
It's a DJI Osmo Pocket 3.
DJI Osmo Pocket.
I see someone with it. It's so cool.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
They better up your commission.
Oh, I should have recorded that more thoroughly. Well, since you asked, it's a DJI Osmo Pocket 3. It's got a 4K 20.
And that's what I call the double shill shuffle, as I'm simultaneously shilling on camera and in real life. But seriously, thank you all for your time and attention. I got a bunch more videos like this on the way, so consider following along and subscribing. All right, thanks guys, bye.